photography. To use lighting effectively, you have to understand how exposure works. If you are unclear of the fundamentals of exposure, such as aperture, shutter speed, or ISO, you should check out those lessons first. I'm going to assume from here on out that you are an expert on aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and how they affect exposure. I think a quick reminder of exposure is a great way to start looking at lighting in photography. This is by no means a lesson on exposure. Please go back and look. So here we go. Quick snapshot, pun intended, of exposure. Exposure is the combination of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO that give you a certain level of brightness in a shot. Exposure allows you to control motion stopping, depth of field, and visual noise in photography. Exposure comes from the mechanics of a DSLR. If you're not sure about that, check out what is a DSLR. The shutter speed is pretty self-explanatory. It's the length of time the shutter opens, exposing the image sensor to light. The longer the exposure, the more light. The lens in your camera has an aperture diaphragm which can let in varying amounts of light over the length of the shutter speed. The wider the aperture diaphragm, the more light that is let in over the course of the shutter being open. This will also affect the depth of field of your image. Finally, ISO is the sensitivity of the image sensor in your camera to light. The higher the ISO, the more sensitive the image sensor is to light, meaning it needs less exposure to capture the image of a given brightness. This all sounds incredibly mathematical, and it is, but don't worry, no pre-calc needed here. Your camera does all of the math for you in the form of your light meter. Your light meter calculates the shutter speed and the aperture, and some possibly the ISO, to yield an image with a nice level of brightness by combining all of those factors gathered when it measures the ambient light in your current setting. If you don't remember how to use your light meter, go back and have a look. All of this is essential to how we use light in photography. If you are using solely natural light and there isn't enough ambient light, your camera will need a very long shutter speed in order to give you a bright image. If you are night shooting with a tripod, that's easily done. All you have to do is use the bulb setting. If, however, you are shooting in low light and your subject is moving or you're shooting handheld, this really isn't possible, and this is where your flash is going to come into play. See the lessons on flash for more information. If you are working in a studio setting and you're shooting portraits or products and you have the ability to control the light, you should watch the lessons on lighting in a studio lighting situation. See you soon!